Throughout history, kings and princes have fallen in battle, succumbed to plague, or been cut down by assassins. But some rulers met their end in ways so bizarre, so utterly unexpected, that they seem almost impossible. These are the deaths that chroniclers struggled to record without embarrassment. Moments when the most powerful figures in the medieval world were undone not by armies or conspiracies, but by toilets, doorways, and their own catastrophic decisions. Death in the Privy, November 30th, 1016. Oxford, England. Edmund Ironside had earned his nickname through 7 months of relentless warfare against Danish invaders. At 26 years old, he'd proven himself on battlefields across England, fighting Canute the Great's forces to a virtual stalemate. His body bore the scars of countless engagements, sword cuts, axe wounds, the marks of a warrior king. None of it would matter. That evening, Edmund retired to his private chamber to use the royal privy, a simple wooden seat positioned over a cesspit. It was the most private moment a king could have, the one time when guards remained outside and protocols of power temporarily dissolved. But Edmund was not alone. Hidden in the darkness below, concealed in the filth of the cesspit itself, an assassin waited with a sharpened blade. The killer had positioned himself hours earlier, enduring the stench and degradation for a single moment of vulnerability. As Edmund sat down, the assassin struck. According to the 12th century chronicler Henry of Huntingdon, a dagger was thrust upward through the privy hole, driving deep into the king's bowels. The sudden, searing pain caused Edmund to cry out. Guards rushed in to find their warrior king collapsed beside the toilet, blood pouring from a wound no armor could have prevented. The blade had severed major blood vessels and punctured intestines. Edmund's face contorted as he struggled to comprehend the dishonor of the attack. He had survived countless battles, had stood against entire armies, had fought with legendary courage, and he was dying on a toilet. Within hours, infection spread through his abdominal cavity. No medieval surgeon possessed the knowledge or tools to save him. Edmund Ironside, unbreakable on the battlefield, died in agony, killed not in glorious combat, but in his most vulnerable position. His assassin was never caught, though many historians believe the murder was orchestrated by Knut, who became King of England immediately afterward. The death was so humiliating that some chroniclers refused to record the true details, preferring vague references to sudden illness. The king who died during his morning routine, October 25, 1760, Kensington Palace, London. King George II of Great Britain was 77 years old, partially blind in one eye and increasingly deaf. But he maintained rigid daily routines with Germanic precision. At precisely 6 o'clock in the morning, he rose from bed, drank his customary cup of hot chocolate, and retired to his private chamber to use his close stool, an elegant wooden cabinet concealing a chamber pot. His German valet stood nearby as protocol demanded, remaining outside the doorway for privacy. Minutes later, a sudden heavy thud echoed from within. The valet rushed inside. The King of Great Britain lay motionless on the floor beside his toilet, a small cut on his face bleeding onto the ornate carpet. Palace staff carried George to his bed, while messengers raced to summon Princess Amelia. The monarch's breathing grew labored. His pulse weakened with each passing minute. Before his daughter could arrive, George II was dead. Dr. Frank Nichols performed the post-mortem examination. The king's aorta, the main artery carrying blood from the heart, had catastrophically ruptured. Blood had flooded into the pericardium, the sac surrounding the heart, creating pressure that made continued pumping impossible. Modern medicine recognizes this as an acute aortic dissection, a tear in the arterial wall that causes sudden death. George II had likely been living with a weakened aorta for years. The simple act of straining during his morning routine had triggered the fatal rupture. The ruler of the British Empire, master of territories spanning the globe, had died during the most mundane moment of his day. If you appreciate this kind of detailed historical storytelling that uncovers the stranger truths behind royal deaths, please consider liking this video. A feast that became fatal, December 1st, 1135. Lyons-la-Forêt, Normandy. King Henry I of England was 67 years old and at the height of his power. The fourth son of William the Conqueror had ruled England and Normandy for 35 years with ruthless efficiency. He was known as the Lion of Justice, feared, respected, and seemingly invincible. That evening, at his hunting lodge, the royal kitchen prepared his favorite delicacy, lampreys. These primitive eel-like fish with circular tooth-filled mouths attached to prey like living suction cups. They were considered a luxury, reserved for nobility. But Henry's physicians had warned him repeatedly. The king suffered from gout, and they believed lampreys aggravated his condition. According to chronicler Henry of Huntingdon, they had explicitly forbidden him from eating the fish. Henry was not a man who took orders, even from medical experts. That night, as recorded by Matthew Paris, the king ate voraciously despite all warnings. Witnesses described how he consumed portion after portion, ignoring concerned glances from his courtiers. Within hours, severe stomach pains gripped the monarch. His face flushed with fever as toxins from contaminated fish spread through his bloodstream. By morning, Henry was delirious. The king who had conquered Normandy and established England's treasury system now writhed on his bed, clutching his abdomen. Vomiting and diarrhea led to severe dehydration. Royal physicians tried desperately to purge the poison with herbal remedies, but the damage was too extensive. After 4 days of intense suffering, Henry I died on December 5th. The post-mortem examination revealed a disturbing detail. The person who extracted the king's brain for preservation reportedly became violently ill immediately afterward and died within days. The lamprey toxin remained potent even after death. The mighty Lion of Justice had been killed by his own appetite, undone not by political rivals or battlefield enemies, but by a fish he'd been warned not to eat. The chase that ended in catastrophe. August 5, 882. Tours, West Francia. Louis III was 17 years old and celebrating. He had just repelled Viking invaders from northern France, proving himself a capable military leader despite his youth. The future seemed bright for the young king. That afternoon, Louis spotted a young woman crossing the courtyard below his window. According to the Annals of Saint-Vaast, his interest was immediately captured. She was the daughter of a local noble, and when she noticed the king watching, she quickened her pace toward her father's residence. Louis, perhaps emboldened by his recent military triumph, decided to pursue her. He called for his horse immediately. The king mounted his steed with haste, not bothering with his usual protective headgear. As the girl disappeared through a low doorway of a nearby building, Louis spurred his horse forward at full gallop. The chase had become a game, one the king was determined to win. Witnesses described how he leaned low over the horse's neck as he approached the narrow entrance, preparing to follow her inside. What Louis failed to notice was the height of the stone lintel, the horizontal beams spanning the doorway. At his speed, there was no time to adjust. The king's skull struck the solid stone beam with tremendous force. The impact echoed across the courtyard, a sickening crack that made onlookers freeze. Louis was violently thrown backward off his horse, landing motionless on the ground. Blood pooled quickly around his shattered skull. Royal guards rushed to his aid, but the damage was catastrophic. The king's skull had fractured in multiple places, fragments of bone driving into his brain tissue. Within minutes, seizures began. By nightfall, Louis III was dead. Not from a Viking sword, not from political assassination, but from a moment of youthful impulse and a doorway too low for a galloping horse. The Carolingian dynasty lost a promising young king because he couldn't resist chasing a pretty girl. The window that killed a Crusader king, September 10th, 1197. Acre, Kingdom of Jerusalem. Henry of Champagne ruled the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem at 31 years old. As nephew to both Richard the Lionheart and Philip II of France, he commanded respect throughout the Christian and Muslim world. His palace in the coastal city of Acre featured impressive stone windows overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. That morning, Henry was preparing to meet with the ruler of Cyprus. Witnesses later described how he paced near the large arched windows of his upper chamber, perhaps nervous about the diplomatic negotiations ahead. The windows had low stone balustrades rather than glass, a common feature in the warm Mediterranean climate that allowed sea breezes to cool the interior. Henry's court dwarf, referred to in chronicles as Scarlet, was present, entertaining his master before the important meeting. According to chronicler Roger of Howden, Henry leaned against one of the window balustrades while watching ships arriving in the harbor below. What happened next occurred in seconds. The stone railing, weakened by salt air and inadequate maintenance, gave way under his weight. Henry lost his balance and tumbled backward through the open window. The drop was over 40 feet to the stone courtyard below. These deaths raise fascinating questions about chance, fate, and how history's course can turn on the smallest details. What do you think? Were these accidents, or does the absurdity reveal something deeper about medieval power? Share your thoughts in the comments. Scarlet, seeing his master falling, lunged forward and grabbed at Henry's flowing sleeve in a desperate attempt to save him. The dwarf's weight was insufficient to halt the fall. Instead, he was pulled through the window as well, still clutching the fabric. The two bodies plummeted together. Scarlet landed directly on top of Henry. The combined impact shattered Henry's spine and skull. Court officials rushed to the courtyard to find the count still breathing, blood pooling around his broken body. Scarlet, who had survived the fall by landing on his master, screamed for help. Physicians were summoned, but within minutes, Henry of Champagne was dead. The fall had been made worse by the very servant who had tried to save him. The Crusader kingdom lost its ruler to a poorly maintained window railing and a loyal dwarf's failed rescue attempt. The throne that turned assassin, summer, 1063. Domus, Hungary. King Bela I had seized the Hungarian throne 3 years earlier by defeating his brother Andrew the Fructors in battle. At 47, he was known for physical strength and military prowess. Nobles throughout Central Europe feared and respected him in equal measure. That warm summer day, Bela assembled his court to receive foreign dignitaries and settle important state matters. The great hall filled with Hungarian nobles and visiting ambassadors. At the far end stood the king's magnificent wooden throne, elaborately carved with symbols of royal power, raised on a platform to emphasize the monarch's elevated status. As proceedings began, Bela strode confidently across the stone floor toward his seat of power. Courtiers bowed as he passed. The king ascended the platform steps and turned to face his assembled subjects before sitting down. According to the Chronicle of Simon of Casa, written 2 centuries later, what happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As the king's full weight pressed down, a sharp cracking sound echoed throughout the hall. Supports that had been improperly constructed or deliberately sabotaged suddenly gave way. The throne collapsed completely, sending the king crashing to the floor amid splintered wood and torn decorative fabrics. The fall itself might have caused only embarrassment and bruising. But jagged wooden fragments pierced Bela's body in multiple places. One particularly large splinter drove deep into his abdomen, lacerating internal organs. Blood quickly soaked through his royal garments as courtiers rushed forward in panic. Physicians were summoned immediately, but the internal damage was catastrophic. Infections set in within hours. Medieval medicine had no concept of sterile technique, no antibiotics, no way to repair the damage. For 3 days, the king lingered in agony, his condition steadily worsening despite desperate medical efforts. On September 11th, Bela died, killed not by an assassin's blade or enemy army, but by the very symbol of his authority, his own royal throne. Whether the collapse was accident or sabotage remains debated by historians. But the result was the same: a powerful king destroyed by the chair meant to represent his power. The White Ship Disaster, November 25, 1120. Barfleur, Normandy. William Etheling was 17 years old and the future of England. As the only legitimate son of King Henry I, he represented the continuation of Norman rule in England. He was handsome, well-educated, and already showing political acumen. That evening at the port, William and his entourage of approximately 300 nobles, knights, and courtiers boarded the White Ship, considered the finest vessel in the royal fleet. King Henry had already departed on another ship hours earlier. Before setting sail, the prince ordered 3 casks of wine distributed among passengers and crew. According to chronicler Orderic Vitalis, William and his companions became increasingly intoxicated as they waited for favorable conditions. The ship's captain, Thomas Fitzstephen, was similarly drunk when he finally gave the order to depart after nightfall. The prince and his friends issued a boisterous challenge: overtake the king's ship despite its head start. Witnesses on shore described the crew rowing with reckless speed as they pushed away from the harbor. Many were too inebriated to maintain proper coordination. In the darkness just outside the harbor, the White Ship struck a submerged rock called Quilleboeuf with tremendous force. The impact tore a hole in the port side. Freezing November seawater rushed in, quickly destabilizing the vessel. Panic erupted among the drunken passengers as the ship began to capsize. A small boat was quickly lowered. William was safely placed aboard. The heir to England was being saved. But as the craft pulled away, the prince heard the screams of his half-sister Matilda, still trapped on the sinking ship. Against the pleas of his guards, William ordered the boat to return. As they approached the listing vessel, dozens of desperate passengers tried to climb aboard the small rescue craft simultaneously. It immediately capsized under the weight, plunging everyone into the frigid channel waters. Weighed down by heavy winter clothing and armor, William disappeared beneath the dark waves. By morning, only one person had survived the disaster: a butcher from Rouen who clung to wreckage throughout the night. The royal heir's body was never recovered. Nearly 300 nobles drowned that night, the greatest loss of aristocratic life in medieval English history. The disaster was caused by drunkenness, recklessness, and a prince's fatal decision to return for his sister. King Henry I, who had ruthlessly seized and maintained power for decades, was reportedly never seen to smile again after learning of his son's death. The succession crisis that followed would plunge England into 20 years of civil war known as the Anarchy, all because a 17-year-old prince wanted to race his father's ship while drunk. These deaths share a common thread: the absurd gap between power and vulnerability. Kings commanded armies, controlled vast territories, and held the power of life and death over thousands. Yet they could be undone by a poorly maintained window, a contaminated fish, or their own youthful impulses. Medieval chroniclers struggled with how to record these deaths. Some sanitized the details, turning toilet assassinations into sudden illnesses and drunken shipwrecks into tragic accidents. The dignity of monarchy demanded a certain narrative, one these deaths refused to provide. But perhaps there's something profound in the absurdity. These deaths remind us that power, however absolute it may seem, cannot protect against chance, physics, or the fundamental fragility of human existence. A throne can collapse, a window can break, a fish can kill just as surely as a sword. And sometimes, history's greatest turning points, wars of succession, decades of civil conflict, the rise and fall of dynasties, begin with something as mundane as a king leaning against the wrong railing or eating the wrong meal. The medieval world understood this better than we might think. Memento mori, remember that you will die, was a constant medieval refrain. These bizarre royal deaths were extreme examples of a universal truth. Death comes for everyone, regardless of rank or power. And sometimes it comes in the most unexpected ways. If this exploration of history's strangest royal deaths intrigued you, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more historical documentaries that uncover the truth behind the legends. Thank you for watching.